Let's now go very quickly live to Colombia. As we were saying, the third social meeting of Latin American and Caribbean peoples began in that Latin American country. Let's go live to see listen some of the statements that are taking place at this summit. Latin America is the vanguard that has the strength to bring together sovereignty and save the life of the planet and also of humanity. Those were the words of President Gustavo Petro, a place where from which his visa was rescinded because defending the peoples of Latin America is now seen as a crime in certain sectors. President, here are the women, indigenous people, the people. Latin America as a whole is here. This people is here that walk and is strongly represented in ourselves. Every attack of the United States claims the life and blood of all Latin American youth and farmers. How can they accuse a country like Colombia that is not fighting drug trafficking when it is Colombia that has put on the line its people? Our people is stained with the suffering that is caused by the United States. Today we call for the sovereignty, and we reject all interference from the United States against our people, against this beautiful continent that provides over 25% of GDP thanks to the hands of Latin American people that is not in that power but in Latin America.
Anything. It is historical, this third summit, because it unites in a country that is giving to peace of the region, a country that knows of peace, a country that has suffered the war, and that is why today we are in the epicenter of the region to unite the sovereignty of the people and say no more to the US, no more Trump in Latin America and the Caribbean, no more interference of the US in our peoples, in our decisions, no more suffering and pain. And that is why we reunite today here, this third summit of the peoples of Latin America and these new generations that are giving to the reindustrialization, to life, to peace. That's what we're giving. And of course, we also reject very strongly the genocide of the Palestinian people. Long live a free and sovereign Palestine. Long live Venezuela, Colombia. Colombia and Venezuela are the same flag. One single flag. That is how we have to continue rejecting the interference of the United States, as we have to continue uniting ourselves as countries that are brothers and sisters because we share many things. For example, we are here reunited under the same cause, and that is the sovereignty that is rejecting the interference. President, here we have the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean. Here we have the people that move the world. Thank you very much. We continue with the intervention of the delegate of the organizative committee of the summit. Good afternoon, President Pedro. Before, I want to thank all of the people who are here because I know how hard it was to reach Santa Marta to the people who came from Europe, from North America, from South America. I hope that in Colombia that you're being treated well and know that we are very proud of this third summit of the peoples is being done here in Santa Marta and in Colombia. Dana already said it. We have an interference of the global north, and in that sense, we are being called to think of a national project and a project of the region, which should be led by the young, by women, by African descents, by indigenous, and all of the people and the communities that represent this country and this continent. But besides that, I want to say that this national project is not possible if we don't think of a constitutional, and that comes accompanied and pushed by you. You are the constitutional primary of this country, so we are called, all of us, for us to go out on the streets as we know how to do. The streets are ours, and we hold this constitutional. We expect President Pedro see you there next year in that constitutional one, not because we don't like the constitution of the 91, but because this new constitution will comply with the promises that haven't been fulfilled, that reforms the things that need to be done, because we know that we are a government but we are not the power, but the power is here at the moment. It is us, men and women, so we're going to be with that constitutional, and I call all of us to go to the streets with this purpose. Thank you very much and welcome to this third summit. Thank you to the delegate of the organizational committee. It is the moment to listen to the intervention of the facilitator of the Day of the Continent for Democracy and Against Neoliberalism, Oscar Danilo Urrea Camargo. Welcome. President Gustavo Petro, dear ministers, comrades from the organizations and social movements of Latin America and the Caribbean, the processes of regional integration have a history of fight, of sacrifice, of resistance of our peoples and our organizations that work for the defense of the rights of the peoples and its human rights. In the previous editions to this third summit, we reached agreements on a strategy of an agenda with a program that we also packed it in Iguazu in February of 2024, when we agreed on 6 proposals to move forward facing fascism and the moving forward of the extreme right. The first of those proposals has to do with the democracy, the peace, and the regional integration. The second one has to do with the dignified work in times of accelerated transformations, and the third is the rights of the migrants and the right to free circulation. The fourth is a just transition that is popular and feminist. The fifth is the food sovereignty, and the sixth is to reach the environment justice to face climatic crisis. These axes continue being the base of the construction of this third summit, the social summit of the Latin American and Caribbean peoples, and it is what we'll discuss today in our tables to nourish that agenda in a participative way, so we can continue seeing that Latin America and the Caribbean, it is a place free of interference and oriented to the self-determination of the peoples. We expect that the transit of this moment of the peoples in the framework of the fourth summit of the community of Latin America states and the European Union, it is a path for what would be the presidents of the select in the government of Uruguay. And we thank President Petro and the foreign minister and all of the ministers here present, the efforts that they've done for the position of the people to be represented in the negotiations that are had in the negotiations at the international levels between governments. And we're sure that at some point we will be an organ that is consultative, popular of the select as well, for the destiny of the peoples continue to be built through the men and the women that daily risk their lives to find new futures for our people and for their country. Long live the third social summit of Latin American and Caribbean peoples. Thank you very much to the facilitator of the Continental Day. Ladies and gentlemen, next we will have the President of the Republic of Colombia, Dr. Gustavo Petro. Thank you. I want to greet the organizations of workers, the directors and its participants of social organizations that are participating in this summit, leaders, social leaders of the territories, farmers associations together in communal action, youth organizations, cultural, academic community, and the student and defenders of the right of the women, to the indigenous peoples, the black communities, Afro-Colombians, LGBTQ plus population, to the corporations, networks, and the collectives in the defense of the human rights, the memory and the popular organization in the territories. Here we present my government almost in its entirety, the Secretary General of the Presidency, the Governor of the Department of Magdalena that is in charge, Ingrid Padilla Garcia, ministers and functionaries of the government. We also have the Governor of Magdalena, Carlos, here present. Congressman of the Republic of Colombia, Communication Media, my daughter Antonella, who is accompanying me here. She saved herself from being included in the OFAC list. And in general, to all of those who are accompanying us today. Well, I believe that we're living very intense days. Some North American writer wrote a pamphlet that was called The 10 Days That Shocked the World, from John Ricks from New York. I believe that we are living days that are shocking the world without any doubt, and we have to not only live with intensity but try to understand that comprehension is necessary for those who in some way, in the neighborhoods, in the streets, in the municipalities, in the territory, in the local, in the national, or even in these spheres that conjugate the dialogues between states up to this point, as the meeting that is currently happening in Santa Marta, which is the heart of the world. With due respect to the world, this is the heart of the world. The indigenous people, the Arahuacos, the Kogi, say they probably are present here with their organizations, understanding what happens and where are we going, what to do. They said before, the intensity of these days can't make the peoples blind. The people needs to rethink its actions, its own activity, individual activity even, because from here we're not going to leave the same way that we came. And I'm not making reference only to the arrival to this city, but also to these intense days. The world will be different, whether to good or bad. It depends on our own efforts. It depends on the people's, on humanity. No more. Let's just see what just happened in a kind of games in which one launches oneself to the precipice. We come from the Assembly of the UN in New York. We come from a place where two people felt completely alone in reality. Sir Trump and Netanyahu. Trump a little bit more smarter than Netanyahu, noticed what that meant. Its own NATO built from the times that ended in the Second World War and opened what it is known as the Cold War, the military coalition. NATO thought exclusively in the defense of the people of the North Atlantic, or the power of the capital, as someone here said, which was settling in that geography. Peoples in cold seas decided in its majority to support Palestine in the UN Assembly. That was a moment that is historical, that is very rarely analyzed. We did the math because to us President Santos put us in a something that is very weird and no one understands, which is a strategical partners of NATO, but we are not allowed to go to the meetings or anything. We just buy the weapons. They are not helping us. We just buy them. It was a lie that they were helping us. We were buying it. It is a lie that there's any free weapons that arrive to this country. We have to buy them. That's simple. But doing the math of the NATO states who were with the politics of Netanyahu or in silence, and who had decided to support, whether it was formally or hypocritically, to the state of Palestine, as it should be called. Well, it turned out that they lost their majority with France and with several countries of Europe that, facing the push of their peoples, decided to change their positions, and that reached the UN Assembly and left in the biggest isolation Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu. And the words resounded, because in an assembly like that, what is sounded is words and more words. But the words, in one way or another, started reaching power and having power. As the peoples say, the words have power, and only a few instants later, the crowds, the young people that went out in the ships to sail the sea to reach Gaza, to take some food, and they were practically jailed and tortured. Here we have two Colombian, I don't know if they're here, I don't see them in the crowds, but they were taken to the jails. Their names are Luna and Manuela. They're probably somewhere around here. I told them that I was going to give her the cross of Boyacá, and to several Palestinian leaders I want my foreign minister to take notes, so there won't come any excuses in parts of my government wherever they say that because there's no medals they can't make the medals as an excuse. And we said Luna Emanuela and the Dr. Sadafi, I don't know how to pronounce his name, who was in his hospital with his white cloth, with many of his patients and his family dead as well, dead by the bombs of Netanyahu, and he decided to stay taking care of those kids that they weren't his, but he felt them as his because his children had been destroyed by the bombs, and he showed humanity what the meaning of dignity is. That must never be forgotten. The last one to leave the hospital with his white cloak, to surrender himself, to be taken to torture in the prison of the jails of Israel, to that man and to the journalist of the truth and the artist who makes people laugh, the children laugh on the streets and the rubble of that city. I told them that I would give them the cross of Boyacá. To those cities, the foods region, they were not allowed to enter, and the reaction was a lot of crowds that went out. And that is why I want to analyze deeply. It was not a simple declaration of governments in a cold communique that no one reads, that no one tells, that doesn't serve any purpose. Right next to the words that were launched by different governance, men and women, almost by the dozens, I would say, in the UN Assembly, and after of the crime against the fleet of freedom in the Mediterranean Sea, that were for the first time the word democracy was born, and there where is the biggest common grave of the planet in the bottom of the sea, with the bodies of Arabs, of immigrants with black skin who try to escape the droughts of their Middle East, of their Africa, of the invasion wars that they do because of petroleum. There they also committed the crime of stopping the fleet, and the world, the humane world, in the governments that were accomplices of the genocide beyond, and others which are more sensitive people, in which their own governments were accomplices of the genocide, because we have been the witness in these intense days of a genocide. There has been many. There is another one at this moment in Sudan, and we have become sensitive to something that might be the indolence of the political power of the capital. If with financial money, with the money which we call the capital, bombs were made through here, the carbon that is the basis of the bombs that goes through here. This is one of the points that exports the largest amounts of carbon in the world. The train tracks that pass through here doesn't carry human beings, it carries coal to the ships, with the destiny of an industry of the capital, that it is about transforming the atmosphere chemically and ending the life in the planet. Intense days that are showing us how the genocides grow, how the barbarian rises at the same time that the chemistry of the carbon in the atmosphere grows as well, produced by a word that resumes it all, which is greed, the greed of power of capital. Maybe the contradiction that we are seeing today in the bottom of everything is the contradiction between greed and existence, the contradiction between the capital and life. And humanity has to choose. There is no alternative. You either choose the capital and death, or you choose life. And I believe that there's no human being in the world, in any part of the planet, that doesn't know how to choose in this moment. Today, the revolution's name is life. Today, the politics of progress has the name of life. Today, there is no way to separate the moving forward of humanity from the moving forward of life. Today, one thinks and feels and fights for the existence and the life. That is just that simple and profound. It is the conflict that we are living. The bombs with Colombian coal that we stop here from coming out, which were being dropped in Gaza, simply because of the historical problem of Israel and Palestine. It was an experiment to show all of us what was going to happen later. What is coming is not just Gaza. That we are seeing in Gaza will happen in the south, in the continents of the peoples that work and the poor people, in which we don't have the world power, and they're showing us their ferocity, their barbarity, their ways of acting. The democracy in the world has died. What is reigning is barbarism. It is the crisis of a productive system that we call capitalism, that has to learn to have in its vital energy, or actually in their mortal energy, a way of substituting, because it prefers to increase the profit since it was born, instead of maintaining the life in the planet. And that's why they refuse to leave the petroleum, the coal, and the gas. That's why they are against reducing the profit margins, and that's why they're denying to reduce the volumes of greed in their hearts. And that is why they prefer to launch hundreds of missiles, thousands on the children of a poor people, to show the rest of the peoples that are also poor that will also happen with their children. It is an experience for the world. It is a demonstration of the barbaric power. Here in this same city we have lived it. From here there was a fisherman, a poor fisherman. Alejandro Carranza was his name, father of a girl and a boy. The girl wanted to go to university here in the city, compañero Caicedo, and in his efforts to achieving the university, maybe we don't even know, he decided to receive the payment of a drug trafficker who lives in Miami or in Dubai to carry 1 kilo to an island a little further away, and his boat was harmed, and he was in the condition of being unable to defend himself. He let that be known, and a missile was launched to him and those who were accompanying him on the boat. We don't know if it was fishes or cocaine what he was carrying. If it was fish or cocaine, he didn't have a death sentence, and they didn't have to kill him. And we don't know if he was murdered in our Caribbean Sea, in front of Santa Marta or La Guajira or beyond. But anyone that is the place or whatever he was doing, that poor fisherman, no one can say that that poor fisherman, a father of a girl that simply wanted to study a university, and of an underage boy in a farm of Palma, was a drug trafficker. I oppose that. Liar Trump and his friends. Liar Rubio. What you are killing is not drug traffickers. The drug traffickers have gone through your policies to the offices in Miami to speak with the senators of Sir Rubio, to ask that they send bombs here, to ask that here they also take out the president of the republic elected by the popular vote, to try to humiliate us. And Colombia does not let herself be humiliated, because this is also the homeland of Bolivar the Libertarian. One has to read the lectures of these days that are coming, even with bloodstains, that the waves carry it to the beautiful beaches of Santa Marta in the heart of the world. They wanted to sabotage these meetings, I was saying, to the prime ministers of the islands and the nations of the Caribbean not to come, to leave me alone. They told the presidents of the republics, the continental Latin American republics, not to come. And we have a continuum from the UN assembly on the COP30 in Belém do Pará now tomorrow here, in where we are meeting governors, leaders. We can talk among ourselves and make joint communiques and hug ourselves and take pictures with the handshake that is formal and part of the protocol. But the important thing is what happens with the peoples. What we're living needs to be interpreted. It is the fight of humanity for the life against a dark power that has completely been filled with greed and that is not thinking on votes, it is not thinking in agreements, it is not thinking in dialogues, it is just thinking in missiles. In Europe, multitudes went out as never had been seen, maybe, I don't know, in Holland, in Italy, in Spain, in Greece, in all of the parts of Europe. The crowds, the youth of migrants, the youth went out, of those who have always lived there. They went out to scream that they didn't agree with the world that they're living. They talked even of a general strike in Europe that maybe could have been able to effectively being carried forward. And after those crowds went out, more crowds went out in cities of the US, in like Chicago, humiliated also, as they tried to humiliate Colombia and California. In New York, both humiliated, and see how the New Yorker people have responded. It has responded by electing as a mayor one who is similar to us, and one has to understand then that there's things that are happening, that the history has a fluid which is goes either to the abyss or the real transformation of the world. And today we are living those days in this city. Not only we're reuniting tomorrow the states of the European Union and Latin America, all through their representatives, but I, by the order of justice of the Americas, the American Court of Human Rights, that for the Colombian press they don't exist, that court doesn't exist. It has ordained through their ruling that the Colombian state ask for forgiveness to the Colombian society, to the victims that survive of a party that was assassinated in its entirety in Colombia because they were left of the left, the Patriotic Union. Here happened what in many other places, what happened with the social democratic and communist and central liberal party happened in Germany with the Nazis. They were sent to the concentration camps. What happened with the socialists, the communists and Christians, political Christians in Italy, sent to jail by Benito Mussolini. What happened with the Republicans, the Spanish Republicans, sent to the exile or being shot dead in the government of Franco, or in Indonesia, or in the South Cone when a sir like Videla or Pinochet, they took the power and they didn't talk of the crisis of the democracy. They hid the word democracy just so the opposition forces in Latin America were destroyed. The same thing happened here, and there was no general in power. They said that we were a democracy, but we lived 25 continuous years under a state of siege. My youth went under those years. We were scared because if we wrote a a message on a wall and we were caught, we were not going to be alive the next day. A generalized torture of 10,000 people in the city of Bogota looking for us, the M19. And they still wonder why the violence of 1985, because they haven't wanted to reform, make social reforms for a people like Colombia, which is the second nation that is the second nation most unequal in the planet. Because when the peoples express themselves peacefully, 1922 here in Caracas, we are half an hour drive away. They killed 3,000 workers from the banana plantations by the order of the United Fruit Company under General Cortés, I believe. And they shot the workers, and there, what in the pages of 100 Years of Solitude of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who was born very close to here in the banana area. Why there do we have a chapter in which an eternal train that never stops, that their carriages never end, and it was filled with cadavers. And in its literature, it showed what was the killing of the banana fields. And I would like to tell the press that one of the men that commanded the taking of the Justice Palace is a parliamentary of the ANAPO, and he was stolen the elections in April 19 of 1970 and died there. Or they said that he was carried out alive of the palace and then shot death. He was the son of one of the workers that was assassinated in the massacre of the banana crops. That is how the violence in Colombia has been cyclical and permanent. To reach these times of the Patriotic Union, 6,200 militants of the left were assassinated, being workers of the banana crops as well, 3,000 of them in Urabá, masters, students, teachers, people of the indigenous base, murdered one after the other in all of the peoples of this country by a power that was no more than the alliance of the Colombian oligarchy with drug trafficking, that same alliance that is reaching today to the offices of the political representations of Senator Rubio, now Secretary of State in the Congress of the U.S., asking for vengeance against us. The same alliance of the oligarchies and the mafias that assassinated the Patriotic Union is the same one that today tries to isolate Colombia, that tries to humiliate Colombia, and that tries to say that to intervene in such a way that the Colombian electorate that is still firm in the proposal of building a world power for life to repent themselves and end up voting by those who already condemned them to the massacre, the false positive of the 6,000 young people assassinated. Well, tomorrow here, the President of the Republic of Colombia will fulfill the ruling of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and in the name of the state of Colombia will ask for the forgiveness to all of the families of the 6,200 militants of the leftist party Patriotic Union, and expects that never again it's repeated, that never again we have to continue killing among each others, us Colombians, because we already know what is happening in the world, because the missiles have already been reaching places, not only Gaza like we saw on TV, but also here, right in front in our Caribbean Sea, which was not only sailed by the pirates that were trying to take our gold. I have ordained to take part of that gold in the bottoms of the Caribbean, and it was also sailed by revolutionary men and women. The Caribbean Sea is a sea of hurricanes, Sometimes we suffer because of those hurricanes, but many times we have been saved by the hurricanes that bring the water and bring the books in the ships, and they bring the ideas, and they move the people of island. There is a history to build of the politics and the popular life in the Caribbean. If here there was a bigger revolution that was bigger than the French one, and against the flag that was raised by the French Republicans, it was raised by the black men and women, and they destroyed an army of 200,000 Frenchmen in a small island, the island of Haiti. And since they weren't able to be understood by the speeches and the people that defended the word democracy in France, in Paris, where there was no Eiffel Tower, it didn't exist. So then they took the white stripe of the flag, and it ended being blue and red. And if you take here a Colombian flag, and a flag of Venezuela and a flag of Ecuador, if you find it, you will see that most of the flag, or half the flag, is blue and red. So then we have to redo a history in this Caribbean, because it is not that romantic tale in which Miranda was in love. I will give my... La Serena was not capable of enamoring Miranda, that's why he left. But here they brought the tale that the blonde hairs were the first base, and the red lips and the blue of the eyes were the center. What that flag means is that Miranda and Bolivar wanted to put the sun of the Caribbean and the flag of Haiti that screamed freedom to all of humanity. That is the true history. The Haitian flag, like that one, blue and red, of one of the biggest, and maybe the biggest revolution that this continent has ever seen, and that screamed to Europe that the Republic had a second word, which was democracy, and that democracy is not only between whites as they dreamt in Greece, but that democracy was among all of the human beings, independent of the colors, or whether they're men or women, or from any other species, of if they're white, yellow, or if they're from one culture or another. Everyone in humanity have to be free, and we have to be equal, and that is the humanity that we have to conquer now. It was taught to us by the people in Haiti for the first time through the hands of black women that had been enslaved, and they liberated themselves, and they did the first flag of the Caribbean, yellow, blue, and red, which ended up being the flag of the great Colombia, the flag that never should have been lost, and is still in our hearts despite the divisions. The answer to the missiles in the Caribbean, killing poor people because there is not even one drug trafficker, only workers, passengers of an illicit commerce that determines the world. Only working and poor people have they killed with the missiles, and that needs to be known by the society of the United States. They are murdering with their taxes poor people of a Caribbean that has always been libertarian, that maybe screamed freedom before Washington did, or Hamilton did, or any of the founding fathers of the United States of North America. We also scream freedom let's say, at the same time, and we help each other be free. That is why America is not a continent of kings and princes or prince. Each dictator that has appeared here has had its rebellion. All of the peoples have always fought for their freedom. It is the time, isn't it the time to talk again of the great Colombia? I ask myself. The answer that deserved an act that is so arbitrary and so rude with presidents, with peoples of Latin America, and especially acts of murdering, of real murders against humble and hardworking people of this Caribbean. Shouldn't that be our own union? Shouldn't we rethink? And here we have talked of constitutional. And why not organize ourselves through the same basis of society without asking for the permission? The committees of the constitutional in the 3 or 4 countries that are part of the Great Colombia. Why do we have to wait for if a president wants or not, or if the political circumstances allow it or not? If the constitutional power is the power of the people, not of the governments, why don't we say that this reunion that has to do with this meeting could also try to reform the constitutions of one or other country with a mandate that says to create the confederation of the Great Colombia, to unite the Bolivarian dream again and be powerful? Couldn't that be a solution to the actual political problems that are on the inside? And I also ask myself and derive to humanity on itself. Is it today? And we will see that tomorrow. The exits comes from the agreements between governments or states, or is that time for the state nation that was generated precisely by capital is being passed? Aren't we facing a crisis of the UN that is not able to build an army that is capable of stopping a genocide? Isn't it that being unable to do something that we saw in the Confederation of the States of the World to stop the barbarians, to say stop, to defend the rights of the people, the civilization and life? Isn't that showing that we have to move to another stage in which what needs to come together is humanity in itself and act as one single body capable of annihilating the power of greed and putting the flag we wish that is blue, red and yellow in these spaces for it to be the flag of life? Don't we need to overcome the idea of parties, even of classical organizations of the past, even ways of thought that have been old and passed to these new times in which the optic fiber, the global knowledge, the collective work is being built a new revolutionary subject that is called humanity, and that humanity is the one that can stop the nuclear bombs and the genocide, as we just saw a few days ago, stopping even momentarily the bombs on the sky over the children of Gaza that are again starting to fall. Doesn't that mean that we have to have bolder steps and open a new time? There's an old prophecy that says, it was said that it was written in the 60s and the 70s, that one day there will come a day that the gilded eagle will attack the condor, and in that fight of the gilded eagle against the condor, it would awaken the jaguar as well. that was asleep among our people. That's why I have my daughter's cap, which is the jaguar. The ancestral jaguar will awaken if the gilded eagle dares to attack the condor. That is the legend, the story. I don't know if it's true or not, but from there I would say to Rubio and Trump, be careful. You are going through the Caribbean of the libertarians. Beware, you're messing with the homeland of Bolivar. Haven't you read the history of Bolivar? Are you going to the islands and the lands where armies of farmers with very bad guns were defeating the most powerful armies of the world? One of them, the Spanish from the kings, and the other one, the French from the republics, and they were defeated. Beware. In the Caribbean Sea, there's peoples that have always been used to the hurricanes, and they can be unleashed as a hurricane, and that is what the legend says. If the gilded eagle attacks the condor, they will awaken the jaguar. That is the American people. Don't awaken the jaguar. We can still talk. South America can save the U.S. by cleaning its energy of fossils, of coal and gas. Let's talk, but face to face without bending a knee among equals, because if the gilded eagle dares to attack, what they will find here is the jaguar awakening, powerful, and the history will change definitely. Not only in the Americas of the freedom, but in the entirety of the planet, the humanity. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you very much to the President Gustavo Petro Urrego. In this way, we end the present event. Thank you very much for the assistance of each one of the people that participated in the opening of the third social summit of Latin American and Caribbean peoples. The social organizations as well, we invite those who are here to stay in your seats while the President and his committee retire from the place. Thank you very much to all. Have a good afternoon.
Well, we were listening to the statements of Colombian President Gustavo Petro, who was addressing the opening ceremony of the third social summit of Latin American and Caribbean peoples. And we also listened to other authorities that were participants here of this important gathering of social movements and different sectors that strive to work for an integration of Latin American and its peoples and culture, to continue to work for that dream of a unified Latin America, the dream that was envisioned by the liberator Simón Bolívar, a united Latin America that will protect its sovereignty and its people from the interference that has been denounced in this stage, the interference acts that are being committed right now today by the United States empires, and also the denunciation, of course, during the event of the genocide that was committed and is still in a way being committed in Gaza against the Palestinian people by the Zionist entity. Gustavo Petro also in his speech referred to the military deployment of the United States in the Caribbean and the attacks on fishermen, on poor fishermen, that has cost the life of over 50 people, over 60 people by now. It's different attacks on the Caribbean Sea, on fishing vessels, on boats that travel and doing their fishing activities in international waters, an action that has been described by the United Nations and by the International Criminal Court as illegal, as there is no jurisdiction and there is no sense in the use of military action against fishing vessels under the alleged excuse of fighting drug trafficking. So that's what is happening. What happened just now in Colombia, in a small town, in a small people where people are gathering, the third summit of the social people of Latin America and the Caribbean. And this is running in parallel because tomorrow on Sunday is the opening of the 4th summit of CELAC EU, another important moment where also the representative of Latin America and the Caribbean will also defend the people and the sovereignty of their nations as they continue to say to the world and to the North in general that there is still time for talk, but in equal footing, because the times of the oppressed of the colonies has ended, and today Latin America rises and the Caribbean rises with a voice of independence and with a clear goal, which is to protect and preserve the sovereignty and independence of its people. Like this, let's put an end to this news brief. Remember, you can also find this and many other stories on